optics are terrible in this case when you consider the latest scandals, whether it be the IRS targeting conservatives, whether it be the AP being targeted by the Justice Department and the Fox News reporters. It really makes you wonder. You have to ask yourself this question, is can you trust this administration with your phone records?
All right. Very good question. And welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. And joining us now is a man, you know him, you love him, best-selling author, editor at National Review, and you read him there in PJ Media, and former federal prosecutor. The whole thing, helped prosecute the blind sheik and put him behind bars, our buddy Andy McCarthy. And, of course, the latest book, by the way, is Spring Fever, The Illusion of Islamic Democracy. Hey, Andy, how are you?
I'm doing great, Steve. How are you?
I am doing fine, and I appreciate you coming on. I always do. Okay, you wrote a real great piece at the National Review. I believe it was at the Corner. I'm not even 100% sure. But you express kind of my feelings, and you go with A and B, and you talk about the latest NSA surveillance controversies, and you put them into two major, as you put them, inseparable issues. So why don't you give us A and B?
I think the two issues are how necessary are these powers to the protection of the United States? I happen to think they're very necessary, but the case for that hasn't been made very well. And the second issue is how trustworthy is the current administration to wield these powers? And I think, unfortunately, the answer to that question is a much more clear and resounding no than the answer to the other question is yes, even though I believe it's yes.
Well, and as you put out, they are inseparable. So where does that leave you? I won't say us. I won't say me. I know where it leaves me. But where does that leave you in looking at what we have found out about and what's going on here? Let's keep Edward Snowden out of the mix for the time being. But now that we know what we know, and yet we know that it's the Obama administration that's in charge, and James Clapper, as you allude to later, or at least I think you do allude to it later in the piece. With his inconsistencies and seemingly not knowing what's going on or not being forthright. Where does that leave you in your overall assessment of all this?
Well, I continue to believe, Steve, that this is a vastly overblown issue. And I say that as somebody who is a pretty constant critic of the administration, and who also is mindful of the fact that awesome power can always be abused. And when you have the kind of crowd in power that we have now, that has demonstrated itself to be abusive and not trustworthy, that's something to be very alarmed about. But all that said, I think that both of the programs that we've heard about, whether it's the metadata collection program by NSA, or in particular the PRISM program, which is remarkable to me that people who are usually on my side are out there saying that they're highly alarmed by this. I frankly don't get it, and I must say I'm mystified that anyone could have supported the Patriot Act and participated in the arguments about that on the side that I took. And a lot of the people who are now complaining were the biggest supporters of the Patriot Act, and claim that they're suddenly stunned by the fact that we're amassing this major amount of data. And I'm bowled over by the fact that the people who were most supportive of the FISA program, this is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, and the amendments to it so that we could continue to collect foreign intelligence information, for those people to be complaining about PRISM, I think is mind-boggling. And they're either not informed about what PRISM is, or they're not remembering what they seem to have been saying about 5 minutes ago.
And you don't believe that it has anything to do with now it's the Obama administration in power as opposed to Bush? But not only that, the revelations come on the heels of all the scandals, IRS, Justice Department, et cetera.
Yeah, I obviously the context that these revelations come up in, Steve, is very important. But we're supposed to be the guys who aren't like a runaway freight train. We're not demagogues like the left. We actually want to hear facts and parse through them to the extent that's appropriate. The scandals that we've heard about up until now, particularly the IRS scandal Benghazi and this use of investigative powers to go after the journalists, they have one thing in common that's completely remote to these new allegations, and that is their unilateral executive branch shows. To the extent that there's been abuses of power, it's been the Obama administration who abused power, and there's not much that can be done about that or challenged about that. On the other hand, these programs that we're talking about, which are surveillance and intelligence collection initiatives that go back to the Bush administration, are matters of law because they were, hotly debated in our society. Congress enacted laws that were a result of that debate, and those laws provide for exacting oversight by both Congress and the judiciary. Now, you mentioned what I said about Clapper today, and I think you've hit exactly on what the problem is here, which is that one of the reasons that we have abided the intrusion of our, at least the potential intrusion of our privacy that is entailed in these programs, is that we have confidence that there's not only judicial, but there's congressional oversight. And when you have a situation where the top guy in the administration, in the intelligence community, comes in and tells something to a Senate committee that is flatly 180 degrees wrong, you undermine everybody's confidence in one of the things that bolsters this whole initiative, which is the idea of congressional oversight.
Right. So he's misleading the Congress on one hand, and then says, "Don't worry about this program or that program," because the Congress is overseeing it. But if you're telling them, false information or withholding information, how are they supposed to oversee it? Absolutely.
Yeah. I think now, to be fair, and I really am trying to be here. I heard John Bolton make a point earlier today, and I think there's a lot to be said for this. Why does the senator ask that question at a hearing? Because the Senate obviously, is informed, at least, components of the Senate are informed about what this program was. And a guy like Wyden, who was a key participant in the debates over both FISA and the Patriot Act, certainly had reason to know the answer to the question.
Right.
He was asking.
So why put it out there? Yeah.
Yeah. That said, if you get a guy like Clapper who will tell you that the Muslim Brotherhood is a large secular organization, you're apt to get him to say anything.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. All right. One more for you quickly before we let you go. Edward Snowden, the leaker. He was in Hong Kong. We don't know where the heck he is right now. People on the left and right, Glenn Beck and Michael Moore, have called him both called him a hero. He's a criminal, correct?
I think he's a criminal. Look, he took an oath to protect national security information. Now, somebody else asked me this question earlier today. Could I ever conceive of a situation where you would have to violate your oath, to protect national security information? And I'm old enough now, maybe if you'd asked me that question 20 years ago, I could say absolutely never, ever. I know terrible things happen. And I know there may be times when you're really put at that crossroads of do you honor your oath or do you reveal, information that needs to be brought to light. This was not that situation. And the only reason people think it is that situation is because they're not informed about what these programs entail and what the protections, the civil liberties protections, which were exactingly put into them, what those entail. And they're conflating these scandals with what we talked about before, which are these unilateral executive branch scandals of the Obama administration, Benghazi, the IRS,
right. Justice. So this guy, we should pursue him, extradite him if we could find him, and charge him with a felony, correct?
Well, I think so. Except, look, trials are. Every trial is something you have to sell to a jury, and if the political climate is such that there's no way you could get 12 people to convict this guy, I think that would be a terrible thing if that means that it's no holds barred anymore as far as people who take oaths are concerned. But if there's justice, people who leak national security information ought to be prosecuted.
Absolutely, Andy. As always, thank you.